Pedro in the kitchen says, "Love, you know what I forgot to tell you. Do you believe that Alice is pregnant?" Aline says, "Really?" He says yes, you believe she managed to get pregnant, and Aline says, "Congratulations to her, she was trying a long time." And Pedro says, "Yes, I was impressed and I was happy for her," and Aline says, "Love, I don't know what these women have in their minds about wanting to get pregnant, they don't know the work it takes, but if she wanted to, right?" Pedro then says, "I wanted love too, but you don't talk about it," and she replied saying, "Love, for God's sake, you know that a son would get in the way now," and he says, "It won't get in the way, Aline, you know that our life is very good," and she says, "It's love, but it happens that at this moment there's no room for a child and you have to understand that," and Pedro says, "For God's sake, you too, every time I talk about a child you run," and she says, "No, love, it's not a matter of running." Her cell phone rings, and he asks, "Who's texting you?" She replied, "Nobody, is those automatic messages you have, madam, you also want to know everything," and he said, "No, but I only asked you because you looked all suspicious," and she says, "So I'm already answering you, and everything you want to know, poke around everything, and excuse me." And he just talk about son in. Pedro was already suspicious of Aline, because every opportunity she had, she would run to the room and go to hide her cell phone. Pedro enters the room and says, "Love?" She says, "Hi," and he says, "Why did you hide your cell phone like that?" Aline replied saying, "I didn't hide anything, Pedro, I just came here to be able to move and see things on the internet," and Pedro then says, "At that time when we were in the living room you received a message," and she says, "Yes, and I told you." "What messages are they? Are those automatic messages from the operator?" and he says, "No, Aline, it wasn't, and I'm sure." She mockingly says, "Now you have a crystal ball to know?" And he asks, why is she doing that to him? She says, "Doing what, Peter? And tell me, for God's sake, I'm not patient," and he says, "First I talked about a son and you don't care about a son," and she says, "Yes, it's my wish," and he continues, "According to you receive a message and you leave already stressed, fighting with me just because I asked you who it was that texted you," and she replied saying, "No, it's because you asked me who was texting me. Is that everything, you want to control me?" and he says, "I don't want to control you," and keeps saying, "Let's do the next thing, shall we take the test? Let me touch your phone?" She replied, "No, not on my cell phone. Have you ever heard the word privacy? So my cell phone is my privacy, you don't have to touch it and I touch yours?" And he offers, "Want to tinker? Anytime you want, it's at your disposal," and she says, "It's your thing, for God's sake, Pedro," and he says, "Just let me remind you of something, I'm not an idiot," and she says, "We're in the 21st century, and everyone has cell phones, yours, and spare me," and he says, "You can't do this to me, Aline," and she says, "I have zero patience with you, and stay there alone because I won't be hiding this humiliation." Pedro sits down and says, "Something is wrong." A few days later Aline arrives and says, "Hi, love," and he greets and says he was late when she says, "I was late because Pedro?" And does he speak? "Now it's 3:30 and you told me you would arrive at 2 in the afternoon," and she says, "I went to the salon to have my hair done and fix myself," and he says, "But you didn't go out with that outfit, and what's that outfit?" And she says, "It's a new dress that I bought and already put on at the store, did you like it?" And she asks, "What are you about to start?" "And I'm going to take a shower now, because I'm going out again," and Pedro asks to go out again. She says, "I'm going out with my friends to talk and have a drink, what's the problem with that?" And he says, "The problem is that you are no longer worrying about your husband in the house, and the other problem is that I don't know where you are going anymore, and another problem is that you don't even want to talk to me about what that is." Aline annoyed says, "Pedro, didn't I tell you where I was? And where am I going? What's the problem with that? And you know what, I'm going to take my shower and leave." Moments later, Pedro takes Aline's cell phone and sees that a strange number had sent an audio saying, "Hi, my love, I'm coming by to tell you that you look really hot in this lingerie, but next time I want you to bring one white, okay? And I'm missing you already, kiss, I love you, delight." Pedro says, I knew it," and knocks on the bathroom door. Aline replied saying, "Hi, Pedro," and he asks her to open the door, and she says, "I'm taking off my makeup," and he says, "Open here now." She opens it and leaves the bathroom asking, "What is it, Pedro? I can't even take my makeup off." Pedro says, I just want to tell you that for your unhappiness you left your cell phone there, and she says, where's my CE squid? And asks for the cell phone back, and he asks, do you want your cell phone? You can stay and hand it over and say, I've seen everything there, and she asks, what did you see here, Pedro? And ask, who is this guy who is texting you? What guy does she say? And he asks her to open the game and talk about what she was doing. She says, for God's sake, why are you like this? And he says, I know everything, but I want it out of your mouth and tell me what you're doing. She starts crying and asks Pedro for an apology and asks him to calm down and tells them to talk. Pedro angrily says, Chatelaine? You don't have shame on your face, don't you, Aline? I'm here worried about having a child with you. I love you so much, dedicating myself to this relationship every day, and you just stay in the corners and mess with your cell phone and talk about what? Soon Aline says, it was only once, love, I have nothing to do with him. And Pedro questions her, once? You've been talking to this guy for 6 months. And she says, love, please forgive me, I won't do that anymore. And Pedro says, you're so stupid that you didn't even delete the messages, and of course I'll forgive you. Aline, relieved, says, I knew it. And he says, go to the street. And she asks, how so? And he said again, to the street, and yells to the street. And Aline says, I have nowhere to go. And he says, go to his house, and in my house you are not well-being. But no, you have no respect for me or for your family, and wants to know, get out of here, get this money here, and then you buy a ticket and get out of here, and scream out. Aline leaves crying, and he warns not to come back to get anything here.